welcome to the rematch. I have with me a bunch of reporters, but they're all good people. First, we have Michael
So
Lee, who was with the Washington Post for a decade. How are you doing, sir?
I've been at the Post for 15 years, man.
Oh, I thought it was a decade. I had a decade for 15 years. Good Lord.
Yeah. 16 of the last 21 years. Yeah.
Oh, wow. That's what's up. That's what's up. And then so, all right. Well, I shortchanged you. My bad. We got John Mitchell, who was with the Washington Times for many years, although he only claims the Philadelphia Inquirer. But how are you doing? How you doing, sir?
Hey, Ty, how are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I appreciate y'all coming on. And finally, who had his finger all in the camera the whole time just now? Here we have Mike Wise, who was with the New York Times, the Washington Post, ESPN's Undefeated. He just did an amazing interview with Michelle Tafoya. Y'all should really check that out. It was a little bit of a surprising, turn of events in that interview as well. How you doing, sir?
Good. Thank you for having me on. It's nice to see these gentlemen. I haven't seen their faces in a long time.
Yeah. And I got to tell you real quick, Mike Wise. The line that always stood out for me that you said that you wrote one time that I needed to be more like Robert Parrish and less like Robert Frost. You remember that? That was cold, man. I got to be honest with you. That was tough.
I remember being there when he wrote it.
Yeah, I think Michael Lee gave me the line. No, I'm kidding. But no, I can't remember. The funny thing is you were on the forefront of like Def Jam poetry and all the stuff that athletes were doing, sort of athlete activism even then. And in hindsight, you were onto something.
Yeah, it was a little early in it, but yeah, it's just something that I've always been.
Well, and it's also Shaquille O'Neal told me once. He goes, why does everybody say, oh, David Robinson is such a Renaissance man? He plays the saxophone, and then I do stupid rap records, and everybody says, oh, he's not working hard enough in the off season. Like we can all have different interests, and still pay attention to our careers.
I definitely agree. Agree. Well, listen, let me tell you, I really appreciate y'all all coming on tonight. So I guess everybody's wondering, why have I called these various journalists to the rematch today? And so I'll tell you why. They all covered the Washington Wizards while I was there, and are pertinent to this story about Kwame Brown and Gilbert Arenas. That's what we'll start the conversation there. Now, a little bit of background.
Yes.
I still live here in PG County, Maryland. I stayed in the DMV after playing here. I played here for a lot of years, and my kids were born here. They're PG County kids, and me and my wife's comfortable here, so I just stayed here. So all summer, as I've been moving around the DMV, and I posted on social media a few times of my encounters. Okay, so I was around the DMV. And, people are always stopping me and asking me, why don't you say something about what's going on with Gilbert and Kwame? Like, I got that question so much. Like, I was at the Mystics game with my co-host for The Collision, David Zirin and Chuck Modiano. And at least literally a dozen people stopped me at some point saying, hey, you should weigh in on what's going on with Gilbert and Kwame. And I'm like, why should I weigh in? What do you think I'm going to say? But literally today when I posted, people in the comment sections just kind of mentioned it. And I haven't been following everything, but I've seen them going back and forth for a while. It seems to be getting a little bit worse, not gonna lie. And I'm cool with both of them. Everybody knows Kwame's my guy, you know what I mean? And Gilbert's I've had them both on my podcast. I've done events with both of them. I've taken up for both of them, you know what I mean? When other people have kind of been coming down on them, I am cool with both of these guys. Mm-hmm. But it's getting kind of to be a lot. Not it's a lot. So I wanted to go back a little bit, as I was looking at some of the videos. So what happened was I was coming out of Bus Boys and Poets. I was meeting with Andy Shalal, who is the owner of Busboys and Poets. We're working on doing a sponsorship with him with the collision. So it's going to be great. And that's the perfect person to sponsor for us, because they're okay with us talking about all the different things that we talk about, where other people might be a little bit nervous about. So it's the perfect person. But I was coming out, there's a group of young cats. They're from DeMatha, because they all had on all their DeMatha gear. And so they were talking to me about it in detail, and they were, pulling up video and saying, hey, your name's coming up here and there with it. I was like, what do you mean my name's coming up? Because I haven't been following everything, but I've noticed that they've been going back and forth. And so they were like, yeah, man, look, they're going back and they're showing me this video and showing me that video. So all these young people are always watching. And that's the part where, as athletes, it's a little bit tough, because how much influence we have over young people and how much they look up to us and emulate us. And so these young kings were talking about, like, yeah, they're going back and forth. Kwame might mess around and punch him in the face like you punched Brendan in the face. I was like, whoa, where did that come from? You know what I mean? I was like, why did you say all that? He was like, well, you know what I mean? He's saying different stuff. Kwame looked like he's getting mad. He might pull up on him, and like, yeah, they're talking back and forth. And they're like, yeah, so I'm talking to them. It's been about 15 minutes going by. And so I seem to have pinpointed where the beef kind of started. And that's where I wanted to bring you all on, because we were all there. So we're going back a little bit. So I'll see if y'all even remember all of this. So we're going back to the playoffs against the Bulls, 2005. That's what we're going back to. Do y'all remember that playoff series?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's where we're going back to. And so it was
a playoff series. So that was actually one of the times they did win.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. And so we're in the playoffs against the Bulls. So we go down the first game. Now the Bulls had a great team. They had Tyson Chandler. You had Ben Gordon, Kirk Heinrich, had old Fallon, Nocioni. But they had a good team. They were a good team. So we go down there and we lose our first two games in Chicago. We got smacked. Like we didn't shoot well. We didn't play well. Everything was clicking for Chicago. It was not good, right? So we come back to the Verizon Center. There was a Verizon Center then. I'm old school. I still call it the Verizon Center from now and then. And so Coach Eddie Jordan made an adjustment to the lineup, like any coach would make adjustments during the playoffs. So he brought me in and he said, listen, I don't like the way the offense is flowing with Brendan. And I want you to run the offense the way it's supposed to be run. He had the Princeton offense. That was like that was his thing, and he liked that flow. And if anybody doesn't really remember the Princeton offense, it was a free flowing offense. He wanted me to get the ball at the top of the key, dribble handoff, really hard dribble handoff, either going right or going left. And as I would come across with the dribble handoff, I would dive hard to the basket. That's what he wanted to do. So that would cause the defense to have to make a decision. Either they would have to show out on the shooter, or they would follow me to the basket. Now, making that adjustment, we had shooters. We had Juan Dixon coming off shooting. We had Antoine Jameson. We had Larry Hughes. We had guys that can shoot. We had Gilbert, who would dribble hand off him too, and he would come out and shoot. So they went with them, right? I rolled hard to the basket, wide open. I got like 5 dunks in the first quarter. You know what I mean? So we ended up winning the game. I had a great game. I had like 20-something points. So after the game, I had like a circle of media all around me, including y'all. Y'all were all there. A circle of media all around me. And I'm, talking. I'm saying, yeah, you have to stay ready and giving all y'all the one-liners. We might have been down, but we weren't out. And, we had to, stick to this, all that good stuff, right? So I finished my interview, and then I look over, because my locker was right across from Kwame and Gilbert's. And I see the media, I see y'all going back and forth between Kwame and Gilbert. And then you go like here, and then the group went over here, boom, and over here. And I'm like, huh, what's going on over there? And I see them mad, and I can't really hear what they're saying, but I see them looking mad and everything like that, right? So I'm like, oh goodness gracious, what is this? So after a while, I hear about what was happening, and if y'all remember, I actually, came to y'all individually and be like, don't write what they got going on. This is, we won the game. We're in the playoffs, and y'all all were like, listen, Ton, honestly, we have a job to do. You know what I mean? They're talking to us. What do you want us to do? Not write about it? If I don't write about it, the next person's going to write about it. They're talking to all of us. And I'm like, I know, but goodness gracious. You know what I mean? Like, so it just went downhill from there. Now, do y'all remember all of this? Am I telling y'all, Michael Lee, you remember all of this?
I remember that game. I remember that night. I remember your performance. I remember someone described you as poetry in motion that night.
Okay. I think that was you.
Yeah. And so I definitely remember Kwame being frustrated and then not showing up to practice the next day and then being suspended and just basically that was the end of his career in DC. So now I remember all of that. I remember that whole series, like because uh, there was just so much going on and so much at stake because nobody had been on that stage before, really. Like all the talent that you had on that roster, nobody had been to the playoffs. Nobody had that experience, so it was like new. It was new for the city. There was so much excitement. And I think everybody felt a desire to be the man or be in that moment and help DC to get excited about basketball because everybody knows that DC's, they love the Commanders, but it really is a basketball town. And that just felt like a moment for the city. And I think everybody wanted to show out. And I know that Kwame probably felt the pressure more than anybody because he was a free agent that year. And and he needed to have a big playoff performance to get paid that sum because he didn't have a great season.
Right.
So I think guys were feeling pressure. Larry was a free agent at that point too. So there were a lot of people's careers that were at stake. And so I know the pressure was higher than it had ever been, just from the expectation from outside and then from inside to perform.
Yeah. John, what do you remember from that pretty much?
Yeah, because you guys, I mean that series turned, and I never knew because I thought that was a good locker room, But as Michael said, guys were playing for dollars and cents, and that always has an impact on behavior. But it was just kind of weird because like after that, Kwame never played again in that series, did he? If I'm not mistaken.
Wow.
I don't think
He missed. He skipped practice. He
Yeah,
got suspended.
and because I remember talking to Grunfeld, and Ernie was always a little bit obtuse and never really too direct about what was going on. But he's like, yeah, he's no longer, Kwame's not going to be a part of this anymore. And I was wondering because we even going back and forth between those guys, and I do remember that in that cramped locker room. I didn't sense with that team. It seemed like a good bunch. You guys seem like a good bunch. And now to see where those guys are now, and so, I mean, because ironically, when I did go to the Inquirer, Kwame was there. Kwame was playing for the 76ers, and he was a much more mature Kwame Brown. Kwame was entered that situation in Washington. It was a horrible situation for him. To be, this kid out of high school who everybody, I mean, that was the year I think the high schools all went real high, very high in the draft that year. And to see all the pressure of playing alongside, with Jordan coming down on him, with Doug Collins, who showed him no mercy while he was there. And I just think, I mean, Kwame caught hell from the media. Those guys from the Post, man, I think it was Sally Jenkins who wrote the article about him not
spend time with him, and
that was such a terrible article. And it was just all not true. So I remember with that article that you just mentioned, and and she was talking about how he didn't know how to do this and he didn't know how to take clothes to the dry cleaners and didn't know how to, I was like, wait a minute. He didn't know how to order food and all this different stuff at a restaurant. I was like, wait a minute. I go to eat with Kwame all the time. That's not true. You know, it was just that and this is the problem that I had, is that they wanted to create this image of Kwame that just wasn't accurate, and they didn't tell the whole story. So one thing about this, and I need people to understand this, because people always talk about, you know, they call Kwame a bust, and they say he wasn't good and everything like that. Kwame was the best player in the draft. I saw them bring all the top big men in the draft to go to work out one-on-one against Kwame. So I got drafted in 2000 to Dallas Mavericks, but I never played there because I got hurt. So I had surgery. And when the Juwan Howard trade happened, and there was like 7 people came over from the Mavericks. I was having surgery, so I just came in at the very end. And you know, I saw like the last few games that Leonard Hamilton was coaching. It looked pretty bad, you know what I mean? It was getting beat by a whole lot. And so that stayed up there that summer working out. So that was when Kwame was coming out. So I remember them bringing every single top player. They brought Eddie Curry. They brought Tyson Chandler. They brought it wasn't even close. I watched the workout with my own eyes. It wasn't close. Kwame was killing both of them. And so he was here. So a lot of times when people say, you know, why did MJ pick Kwame? Kwame was the best. He showed that he was the best person in the draft. That, you know, from those workouts. Now, I didn't see everything else, but from those workouts that I saw, it wasn't even close. Now, after that, then when he came, then it was kind of like a no-win situation for Kwame, to be honest with you. But as far as where he was, and you know, before the draft, he was a totally different. People didn't get to see that Kwame.
Right.
I mean, you know, it's interesting because I go back with Kwame even before that, because I was covering high schools in Georgia when he was coming up. I was the person that he told that he was going to consider going to the draft. You know, before all that happened, because I remember
you broke that story.
I don't say I broke it because he announced later, but I remember he was Georgia State High School Player of the Year, and so I got a chance to interview him, and that was like the first interview that he was really granted to give, because the school that he went to really kept him sheltered. Like after games, like it was the coach that was the only voice that you would get. You wouldn't get players, and so I had a chance to talk to him and interview him about, you know, just he had committed to Florida. He had planned on going to Florida to play college basketball. And really, that was his whole thing. Like he hadn't even considered the NBA. But at the time, Tyson Chandler and Eddie Curry had both announced that they were going to go pro. And Kwame, I remember talking to him when he was in high school, and he knew he was better than them. Like he was like, I don't know how these guys are going pro when I'm thinking about going to college. And he's like, you know, and he said, if they say that I can be a top 5 pick in the draft, then I'm about to consider leaving. Because, you know, his mother was dealing with some health issues, and he wanted to, you know, he was basically going to be asked to save the whole family. And I think he was under a lot of pressure, you know, when he entered the league. You know, he's a teenager from, you know, a really small town in Georgia, South Georgia, and he all of a sudden he gets handed, you know, millions of dollars, a lot of responsibility, a lot of pressure, and he has to play with Michael Jordan as a rookie, which was just an incredible responsibility for any kid to have to, you know, come into. And knowing that I spoke to him in like March of that year, and so do the math in terms of when he started really seriously thinking about going to the NBA. Like he was ready to go play for Billy Donovan and be, you know, part of that program, and, you know, and play college basketball. And then all of a sudden everything shifted once he realized that, you know, there were guys that were at a place that thought highly of themselves, they could enter the NBA. He wasn't there mentally. So I don't know if he ever really got there to where he's like, I feel like this is where I belong, you know, and you know, before the draft. Then of course he plays them, he beats them, you know, like you said, in workouts. And I'm sure it just confirmed to him what he always knew, that he was better than those guys. But he stepped into a different environment where, you know, they're going to Chicago together, and the whole thing is being built around them. What we're going to say, hey, you're our guy. We're going to build this thing around you. And he's the number one pick. And he goes and plays with Michael Jordan. Like,
Right.
ain't no way he built anything around you. And so
Right.
he never had the opportunity to be.
Michael wasn't. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Michael.
No. I'm saying he never had the opportunity to be that guy that you expect a number one pick to be, because he may have been the number one draft pick, but he definitely was far from the number one person in that organization.
Right.
And I think if he had gone to a situation where maybe he was, it
100%.
might have been a different career for him. But he went to a place where he had to not only figure it all out as a high schooler who never considered the NBA until like a couple months before the draft, to be under the pressure of having to perform with the greatest of all time. Like, that's a lot,
It's
for
a hell of a
anybody.
fishbowl. It's a hell of a fishbowl.
Yeah.
Like you said, to go from in small town Georgia, where you do get the adulation and recognition of being the best, among the best basketball players in the league. I mean, physically he was a man at 18, 19. Kwame was a man, but to go from that, I remember the summer leagues up in Boston, just watching him, and he did show flashes. I mean, you saw him, you saw the physicality, the power in his game. But basketball players have personalities, and you're going to react to those triggers. That's the part that's not predictable. That's the part that's not predictable. And I think that was a lot of what was going on with Kwame. I do remember. I'm not going to be sure because I know you want to get Michael in here, Mike Wise in here. I remember Kwame had this one stretch of games at one point in his career where he was really playing well. I think he was really playing well, and the
month before his last season.
Yeah,
like right the fourth season.
And then he suffered. Was it a knee injury? It was some injury.
I think he broke his foot.
Yeah, and I felt sorry for him because I was like, okay, I can see it, and let's not make no bones about it. When MJ went off the record about him, he basically parroted everything you said at the time that which you saw. He said, hey, he outplayed all those guys. I played all of them.
And the messed up part about it is not. I'll go to you right quick, Mike Wise. But the messed up part about it is he was playing through injuries, and I remember them not allowing him to heal. I remember the trainers, Eric Waters in particular, putting pressure on him, like, okay, you got to show everybody that you deserve to be the number one pick. You got to show them. I'm like, wait a minute. And I'm listening. I'm like, wait a minute. If he's injured, then what does that have to do with being the number one pick? Like, what are you talking about? But he's playing. He's playing with a hurt foot. He's playing with a torn hamstring. He's playing with a lot of stuff that people didn't know. And Eric Waters just kept putting him out there. You know what I mean? And there was a lot of frustrating things that I saw while I was there, and it was just that pressure of everything was his fault, no matter if it even had anything to do with him. We won, and it was all hail MJ. Everything is great, everything. But if we lost, it was Kwame's fault. You know what I mean? And I just was like, man, this is really messed up. But going back to that game and that playoff series, Mike, that was the one time that I had an argument with Eddie Jordan, because I was defending Kwame because first of all, that was my man, but I was just like, number one, we need Kwame. You know what I mean? But I don't. But it was when he didn't come to the next practice, and it was a boiling over point of frustration. And I didn't understand why he was as mad as he was. But there was so much frustration for the past, his entire time. He had so many different reasons and so many times where it could have boiled over. And I was always just amazed at how he kept it together. You know what I mean? I really was, because he's gone over some of the details of the things that he's had to go through, and it was just for a 17, 18-year-old kid to have to deal with what he had to deal with. It was really messed up. But that game, if you remember that, Mike Wise,
that
was the start of everything.
Yeah, I think it really was a climax. First of all, it's funny. I miss I miss the days. I'm nostalgic for the days when players went to reporters to tell their messages to. They didn't have to just go on the Collision or another part of social media, and or the Players Tribune. It used to be us, boys. It used to be guys. We were the guys.
Hey,
But
times is changing.
but like it was like, all right, we got something here. We got a story for tomorrow. But aside from the media part of it, I think that yeah, I got to DC a year before that, but I had done a lot of, I was covering the NBA at the New York Times, and I remember just hearing these stories about Doug Collins and Michael Jordan. Just the whole idea was break Kwame down, break him down, and we'll build him back up. It's hard. I think if they learn nothing else, and I'm sure college coaches learned it too, like you can't be the Bob Knight that was. You can't put a 17, 18-year-old kid against a locker who it may very well be the sole provider for his family. So I think that Kwame probably just wanted not respect as a player, but just respect as a young man.
Mhm.
And I don't know if he got that. And I think that if I don't know if Doug Collins ever had regrets about it. I don't know if Michael Jordan did. But whatever they said they played some psychological warfare on him that just messed him up. I don't know. You saw it more than I did, Atan, and you guys were, and John, you were covering the beat at the time. I just don't. Yeah, he just wasn't set up to succeed.
Right.
From the beginning. He wasn't set up to succeed, and here we are at this game, and this incredible moment in DC when, whatever you think about the Michael Jordan years, everybody says they were about Michael. Well, this was about the Wizards. This was about DC basketball, and all of a sudden they're on. Gilbert hits the shot. They win this series. Kwame should have been part of that. Kwame should have been part of that. I mean, he earned that, and that he couldn't was sad in itself. But and the fact that all these years later that would that would be the start of a beef that went back years. I mean, I can't think of anybody I can't stand from 25 years ago. I don't. Well, maybe Tony Kornheiser. That's it.
Where'd that come from?
No, I'm kidding.
But go ahead.
I can tell you the whole backstory and why I think this beef is still going on and why it really took off then and why he didn't show up to practice the next day. Because I had the fortune of going out to LA after he got traded to the Lakers and spending some time with him.
Right.
And it was a very revealing conversation. And he told me at that point that the reason why he didn't go to practice the next day is because he was afraid of what he was going to do to Gilbert if he saw him. Like he said that he was going to, for be frank, he said he was going to slap the shit out of him.
I remember you wrote that.
Yeah, he said I was going to slap the shit out of him, and I didn't want to do that because I it was best that I stay away. Otherwise, I was going to hurt somebody. And I guess if you don't want to hurt the franchise at the moment, And so he didn't want to be that guy. But
Kwame was Javaris Crittenden before Javaris.
Well, Kwame was upset because
like oh my God,
he was a free agent, right? And during that season, were you represented by Arn?
Yeah.
So at the time, Arn was his agent, and he was thinking about firing Arn. Okay. That was that he was thinking about going to a different agent. Mm-hmm. And so Dan Fagan was a big, powerful agent at the time. He's the late Dan Fagan, mm-hmm. And so he represented Gilbert Arenas. And so during that time that he was considering hiring another agent, he had conversations with Fagan, and ultimately he decided to stay with Arn Tellem. And in his mind, that's when the whole thing with him and Gilbert started, because he believed that Fagan had basically convinced Gilbert to just shut him out for the rest of the year. Don't pass him the ball. Don't give him any opportunities. Mess up his chance to make money because he's not going to make money for me. That's what he thought Fagan had told him to do. And in his mind, that's where that whole beef started.
Because do you think that, hold on, Michael, do you think that happened? Do you think an agent told a player to freeze a play, another play out, and that player did that?
I think that if Kwame had played at a high level and was performing at a high level, it wouldn't matter. Like Gilbert would have had no choice but to give him the ball. But he also was struggling. Like he wasn't playing great basketball because you said he was dealing with injuries and he wasn't 100%. So I think that, when you're dealing with a whole lot and you're under the pressure to really have this contract to save your whole life, like this is generational money at that point when you get your first deal after your rookie deal. I think he felt a lot of pressure to really perform at that level. And so when he saw like you, John, getting all those passes and getting those dunks and getting those opportunities, he was like, "See, this is what I'm talking about. I'm not getting these touches. I'm not getting the ball."
Yeah.
And he felt that, and he also felt this too. He didn't like that. He thought that um, Gilbert and Eddie Jordan, that Gilbert had told Eddie Jordan not to play him, not to put him out there, not to give him opportunities too. So I think he just felt that probably from his past with Michael and Doug Collins, he probably just felt the whole world was against him. And he probably felt that it felt bad that there was an organization that he was drafted to be number one in that all of a sudden was like shunning him and sort of shutting him out. And then I remember talking to him about that for that story and him really, just saying that, he just felt that Gilbert was out to get him. Now I wound up talking to Gilbert about it and he obviously didn't say, he said that wasn't true and said there's no way that an agent can tell me how to play and tell me who to get a ball to. Like if he had earned the opportunities, I would have given him the touches. That's kind of what he was saying. If he did something with the ball when I gave it to him, I would have given it to him more. And that's kind of what he said, which obviously wound up upsetting Kwame in the end. But I think that um I had actually talked to Mitchell Butler. You remember playing with Mitchell Butler?
Oh, yeah.
He after his playing career, he wound up working for Dan Fagan in his agency, and so he worked closely with Gilbert, given his ties to DC and everything else. And so I wound up interviewing him, and Mitchell Butler had his own theory of why Kwame resented Gilbert so much, and he felt that um, Gilbert had come in as a free agent signing and he was given the world. Ernie Grunfeld was the GM, and that was his first big signing. He gave him that $60 million contract, and it was like, how are you giving this dude from Golden State all this money, give him basically max money, and nobody really knew if he was worth it, because he just had like a good season. He had one good season with the Warriors, and it's like he was a second round pick. Like you invested in this guy, but the whole thing has shifted to being a Gilbert centric team. And he said that in his mind, I'm not saying this is what I agree with or anything. I'm just saying that Mitchell said he felt that Kwame resented the fact that he was the guy that was drafted number one, but at no point was he made to be the guy in DC. And so Gilbert comes in and he signs his contract, and immediately he's given the keys to the franchise. And so there was always just something there, or at least in his mind, there was always something there between those two because he thought Kwame never had the chance to be the guy in DC. And here's this guy who was drafted in the same draft as him, who was drafted 30 spots after him. And all of a sudden he comes to his town and the franchise is his. And so um, that could have been at the heart of a lot of this. And I think whenever you hear these guys beefing, going back and forth, that's mentioned a lot, where they were drafted. So,
in Gil's defense, though, Gil showed up and immediately showed out.
absolutely.
So and it is a production-oriented, a production-driven business. And I can see where Kwame may have been upset, but it feels to me like it's because Kwame's lashed out at everybody. I mean, let's keep it real. On this podcast, he said no one is safe. He Kwame finds his choice language, and God bless him. It's his podcast, and that's his property. But Gilbert. I mean, you guys remember, taking the shots, turning his back, waiting for the ball to go in, and he knew it was going in the hole. He won DC over, and what's curious to me, Tom, is I don't know why latently these feelings 20 years after the fact are still there.
Well, I think there's a few reasons why, and it's interesting. But let me go to you likewise, because I did want to get your. I know I saw you had something that you wanted to say before I go. Go ahead, Mike.
No, I was just going to follow up on what John said. Is that it must have been, if you're getting inside Kwame's head, I mean, it must have been depressing to when you get there. Michael's the guy, and the next thing you know, you're trying to come into your own, and then all of a sudden Gilbert's the guy, and you get skipped over. And I think even Jerry Stackhouse was probably looked at as more of a big time player and somebody who's going to be a fixture for them, even in his short term, than Gilbert was. I mean, then Kwame was. And so whoever it was, you're right. I mean, when John Wall got drafted in 2010, it was like roll out the red carpet. Oh my goodness, we have the number. We may have a franchise now, and Kwame never experienced any of that.
Yeah,
now, that's a good point. It's when you said, John, mentioned that Kwame's lashed out at everybody. It's interesting. So let me go to 2021. Okay. I'm in my office, actually here. I homeschool. We homeschool our kids. So I was with Imani, and we were working on some stuff. And my phone just started lighting up, like bing, 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 like going crazy. And I'm like, what is going on? And Imani was like, all right, what's going on with your phone? I was like, I don't know. I'm not really that important. People don't call me like that. So let me see what's going on. Like, you keep doing what you're doing. So I open it, and I get all these messages, all these everything. And I had a lot of people tagging me and stuff. And Gilbert was one of the people. He was tagging me and stuff. And I was like, okay, so what's going on? And I turned it on, and Kwame was literally going scorched earth on everyone. Mm-hmm. He was like, F you, F you, F you. Like, he was going on.
I remember this.
So we're sitting there, and Imani looks up like, what are you listening to? I was like, this is my former teammate. I don't know what's going on with it. So he's talking about everybody. Gilbert, you this, Brendan, you this, Ernie Grunfeld, this. He's going down the list. So he was like, yeah, F you, Don Thomas, you cool, you my man. All right, but F you, and F you. And then Imani was like, oh, so not F you? I was like, I guess not. So my phone was going crazy, and I was like, all right, give me a minute. She was like, yeah, you go handle that. I got what I'm supposed to do. So I go downstairs, and I'm looking, and Gilbert was tagging me in a lot of stuff. And so I went back to it, and you know how Instagram message keeps all your old stuff. So I could go back to all the old messages. So I have it, and this was me and Gilbert's conversation. I was like, I said, hey, what I missed? What's going on? And I said, I see I'm tagged in a lot, but what are y'all talking about? I'm not following. Who benched who? Hit me when you get this. Y'all can't be beefing like this. And I don't know what happened after that. I don't know if he called me or whatever, but then I said, no. I didn't say you had nobody benched. I said, and I even said this when you came on my show, because I had Gilbert on my show before. I said that I watched the media go back and forth and start a beef with y'all. Remember, my locker was right across from y'all. It was after a game in the playoffs, and they went to you and said, Kwame said this, that you need to pass him the ball, and then went to Kwame and said, Gilbert said you don't deserve the ball, and he plays better without you. And that's what I saw, not you saying anything. I don't know anything about any of that. I saw the media kind of saying all of that. I said, I'm going to text Kwame. Now, I know that ain't what y'all beefing about. That happened 25 years ago. I hope that's not what it is. So I guess the next part says, look, I'll have y'all both on my show and squash this whole thing. No reason for y'all to be beefing. Y'all are both good people. And then so Gilbert says he went on a rant saying I had him benched because he didn't go with my agent. I was so confused. He said you told him. He said you told him. So I kept tagging you, but listening to him rant, it was more about Matt and Stack, not me. And I said, I just texted him and said the same thing that I said to you. I don't know nothing about no benching and agent. I never said that. But I said what I said literally a million times of what I saw the media do with y'all. And I said, I always blame Doug Collins. And I said that repeatedly publicly. I'm watching these videos now. Yeah, it seems like he is more mad at Stack, but I'm going to try to holler at him tomorrow. So the next day, he said, yeah, it had nothing to do with my episode. It was Jeannie Bus episode. He was triggered when during my episode because Stack did it again, and he came at me about 16 years ago. And I said, yeah, I didn't see the Jeannie Bus episode, but he is convinced you got him benched because he didn't go with your agent. I told him I didn't know anything about that, but that's what he is convinced about. I was like, I don't know, man. I think y'all need to talk. To be honest, then after maybe have him on your podcast and squash it. You know, for me, that would be great to see. And so the next day, he texted me. He's like, I don't even remember him meeting with my agent. I had to Google that. We played in Utah on March 22nd, in which we had 17 games left in regular season. So it doesn't make any sense. I don't remember my agent going after Kwame. It wasn't, I wasn't with my agent then. I fired him the next year because we never talked. So he's saying I waited 20 games to have him benched. And I seen somewhere where he said the Lakers were giving him 88 and they gave him 85 because of me. He's like, this is Gilbert talking. He said, and I had to talk to Prof, he talked about Laurent Prophet, yesterday because I was so confused. The agent died, so I can't ask him. And I said, yeah, I have no idea, man. I told him I think y'all should talk. So then the next text, this is me and Gilbert going back and forth. I was like, we should, but he has stuff that I have no idea about. If someone has been thinking something for 16 years, it's hard to actually get through to them. It started off as I benched him. Then it was Utah and I benched him. Then it was his Lakers contract. And I put the emoji, I don't know. You know what I mean? And then so the next day I asked, y'all talk yet? And he said, yeah. He said, we're cool. And I gave the thumbs up. And that was the last, and that's the last of it. You know what I mean? That's where it ended. So when I was talking, when I referenced before that I saw the young cats outside of Bus Boys and Poets, they showed me a video clip of Gilbert saying that he thought that I said, you know, that I guess Coach Jordan had Kwame benched. And I was like, no, I know nothing about that. What I've always said is what I said to y'all. I saw the media go back and forth between. I told that story like 25 times. I've told it so many times.
It's always the media.
All these years, all these years, all us reporters are looking at each other and thinking, all these years, it's been a Tom Thomas pulling the strings behind the scenes.
Yeah, right. No, it ain't me.
Unbelievable.
No, but seeing them now, and I don't know if they're even, you know, too far gone, you know, with this part, but I do believe that, you know, I think that the way that the things were constructed, you know, in the papers after that whole thing happened, and then he got banished from the team. Now that's the part that I really had a problem with. Like I said, that was the first time me and Coach Jordan really had words, because I was like, this is not fair. You know what I mean? Like and Coach Jordan has this thing. He was mad at Kwame. He was like, you know, he skipped practice. He disrespected everything. You know, so while he was not at practice, when he didn't come that next day, I'm calling him during the practice, trying to get to him, like, hey man, you gotta come to practice, man. What's going on with it? You know, and Eddie Jordan's like, all right, he got 5 more minutes. You know what I mean? I don't care what. You know, he just was not trying to hear it. So that was the first time me and him really had words. But I just thought that I didn't think it was handled well from Ernie Grunfeld, from the management to everybody, because I thought that they could have saved that situation if they wanted to. It didn't seem like they wanted to. Yeah. It seemed like as soon as it happened, Ernie Grunfeld was like, let him go. He doesn't need to be here anyway. Like, it seemed like Eddie Jordan was like, he can get out of here. And I was like, wait a minute, how y'all all kicking him to the curb?
I know John had written a story during the playoff run, because I remember during the playoffs, I think it was before Game 5. It was at Chicago, the big game that Gilbert hit the shot. I think John had that Kwame had a meeting with the front office and Eddie. Do you remember that, John?
I do remember that vaguely. Yeah.
What do you remember about that? Because I remember, I think that was like the end. That was the end there. That's where they decided that he was done.
Yeah, and partially, you know how it is when one administration comes in and you move on from the old administration, and the mindset is to scrub everything from the previous administration and put your players and put your people in place. And I feel that the Wizards had given up. I mean, when Doug gave up on Kwame very early, and that was from the MJ influence because Doug was really whatever MJ said goes, you know, and the frustrations of not getting any real production from Kwame, and it really started after that injury the season before, him coming back and not giving them any real production. And at some point, you look at your assets and you say, I had this guy who was a #1 pick, and it's just not working. And you're governed by the restraints of the salary cap, and if it eventually you see, and I've seen this with athletes in every sport, but particularly in the NBA, teams become embittered with a player who doesn't pan out. You saw it with Ben Simmons. I mean, it was a completely different situation, but teams and front office become embittered with a player, and the mindset eventually becomes pervasive throughout the organization that we've got to move on from this, and again, when, Gilbert was, even though he had his issues with making it to practice on time as
yes,
well.
Yes, he did. All the time.
And that's when he was given that's when it had been established, this is your team, and looking at Gilbert and looking at where their situation is now, I never saw Gilbert as the most mature person, and I know we can get a quorum around that. I never saw Gilbert as a mature, ridiculous talent, who occasionally played defense, when the mood hit him, but not a guy who had the maturity, to lead a team far and understood what it took. He could be a piece. You need a bucket getter, he'll get you that bucket, but he's not going to be. Nobody's going to confuse him with his mindset with Jalen Hurts.
Well, I just weigh in here on this?
Am I being fair?
Yeah, all right, but it's sad to me, like all these years later, that these are your memories. I mean, come on, like these are your memories. Like, yeah, I mean, I look at I'm angry about a lot of things that happened in my career, but like I look at how fortunate I was, and like if I had a regret or if I was dwelling on something, if I was Gilbert, and I dwell on this myself, is like, man, that guy should have his jersey should have been hanging in the rafters. With that 2006, 2007 season before he got hurt.
Yeah.
I mean, oh my God, he was in the MVP running with Dwayne Wade and LeBron. And so this was a generational talent. You're right, he wasn't a great defender, but also you're coming into an era of the league where the rules are different and stuff. So I'm just kind of, like, I understand part of it was injuries, but I just felt like Gilbert got in his own way so much. And then Kwame's got all this bitterness. And it's like, fellas, man, there's more to life. You could say Kwame was a bust as a #1 pick if you want, but he had a long NBA career. He made some money. He has generational wealth. And so I think that it's just sad to me that this is like, you can't put this aside. You can't nip this in the bud. That's the part that bothers me.
Well, let me say that to this, because I've heard that a lot from different people, as far as saying Kwame shouldn't be upset about things that happened a long time ago, this long ago, when he was successful, and he tries to spin it and talk about how successful he was, as far as what he was able, where he came from, what he was able to do, the amount of money that he was able to make, how long he was about to be able to stand you know, in the league, you know, what he's been able to do after the league as far as taking care of his family. So that part is true. But people don't understand the hell that he went through. And I understand it because I was there. I was right next to him. You know what I mean? That's part of the reason why we even got cool. Like I would come up to him sometimes, and I saw him joke about it one time on the show. I would feel so bad for him after seeing how he was getting done, and I wouldn't even know what to say. I'd just be like, "Hey man, you want to go get something to eat or something?" I don't really know what else to even say. That's how bad I feel. Like it was
his big brother in that locker room at the time.
Yeah, and it was messed up though, and it was like, you know, I was like, it's messed up the way that they're doing this cat. Like it's not right. They're not setting. So when people say, well, like when you say, John, that he wasn't productive, he wasn't put in a position to be productive.
He wasn't.
When he was able to really be allowed to play for that stretch of games, I was there. I think one of the games was in Toronto. And he gave Chris Bosh the business.
Yeah.
I'm right there watching. I'm rooting, cheering them on, like, yeah, Kwame, kill him. And he's like just doing, he had like video game numbers.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like 28, 16, you know, 7 black, it was video game numbers. And he had the capability to do that all the time, but he wasn't put in the position to do it all the time. When you're, you know, a lot of times, and this is what Doug Collins would do, it was almost like he wanted to justify, you know, him. It's like they play, it's like, you call it like a yo-yo. You know what I mean? So they put you in, take you out. Plus you do something else. Then put you back in and put you back out again. You know, don't give you the ball, everything like that. You make one mistake.
No consistency.
Take you out. No consistency. So they do that and coaches know what they're doing when they do that. They throw you off. And so you can't get into a rhythm. You're looking over your shoulder. They're fussing at you about this. So you're all the way off. For that one stretch of games, they left him alone.
And he balled.
And he balled out. And what I remember, and this is sometimes because people, I was young back then, real quiet, just watching. You know what I mean? I was just watching. I remember hearing MJ say to Doug Collins, leave him alone for a little bit. And that was the stretch where Doug just didn't say nothing to him. Now, why they didn't continue that after he played as well as he did, I don't know. But I remember hearing MJ say to Doug, leave him alone. Don't say anything to him. Just let him play for a stretch. And it's so when you look at, people got to remember, Kwame was 17, 18 years old with all this happening. So the fact that even the fact that you said, Michael Lee, that when he didn't come to practice, he didn't come to practice because he didn't want to punch Gilbert in the mouth, because that's what he was going to do. That he had a different level of self-control that people don't understand. You know what I mean? Because he could have whooped everybody in the locker room, except for probably Charles Oakley. He probably wasn't going to mess with Charles Oakley. But everybody else, he could have whooped. You know what I mean? I mean, he was like a man child. He was just country strong, and you know, it was just a whole different type of build. I'm like, what? How do you get that big and you're only 17 years old? And so like he had self-control. And I remember one time him telling me, he was like, well, listen, you know I could, you know, knock this dude out with one punch, but if I do that, then I'm messing up everything. Like he was a lot more intelligent than people thought. You know what I mean? But the fact that he had to endure all of that and just swallow it. So when he finally exploded, I was like, hey, you know what I'm saying? Y'all get what y'all get. He was this a long time coming. And the way Stephen A. Smith was talking about him all bad all the time, and he was going up, I was like, I'm with you on that, Kwame. Yeah, why did Stephen A. Smith say all that stuff? And my issue was always directed towards the media. I'll admit that, because I thought that the media casted him in a certain light that was always negative. It was never positive. Remember, Michael Lee, when we sat and I think we met when it was at Regal Seafood. I don't even think that's there anymore. Regal Seafood was like right across, and I was like, yeah, it was something I had a problem with, the something that you wrote, and we was talking. You remember this? We were talking a little bit, and you were saying that you had to.
The audio is kind of going in and out. I'm not hearing what you're saying at the moment.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So you were saying that you're going with the narrative that is out there because that is what the people are know of Kwame, and it was kind of like this. We're going to protect. This is what I saw. You know what I mean? And y'all tell me if it, but this is what I saw from Stephen A. Smith to Michael Wilbon to all the media that was all around the Beltway and everything like that. It was, we're going to protect MJ and his legacy, no matter what it is, you know what I mean, that happens. And we're going to blame Kwame, no matter if it's his fault or not, no matter what he could have not even hardly played that game or whatever it is, it's going to be his fault. So we're going to build over here and tear down over here. And that's that. I had such a problem with that because I'm like, why are all of the media doing this to this kid? So when you talk about how Kwame was still bitter from there, I understand why he's bitter. I just think he's maybe bitter at the wrong person. I don't think that it was necessarily getting. I don't know. I don't know about the agent and all that different stuff. I can't speak to that. And Gilbert didn't pass the ball to nobody. You know what I mean? To be honest with you, the game he might pass the ball to you by accident. You know what I mean? So he didn't pass the ball to nobody. But I understand Kwame's frustration because of what he had to endure for all that time. You know what I mean? So I hate to see them beefing like they are, but I just understand the frustration, if that makes sense.
I think that like the media is like such a kind of a boogeyman that you can just, it could be just a big monster that you want to create. But that was actually a real person that he felt that he had conflict with for whatever reason. In his mind, it may have been true. He felt that they were adversaries in that regard. And like I said, at the time when he feels like the organization is leaving him away, pushing him aside and promoting, someone else, I think that can lead to a certain level of resentment, and that can happen in any field. That can happen in journalism. If you have a job and then somebody comes in and you want to be covering this team, and then they hire somebody to cover that team, and then you got to look at that person and be like, man, I should have that opportunity, and that creates tension within the newsroom, and you kind of go at each other in that regard. You're not looking at the executives or people that making the decisions of who they're hiring and who they're giving opportunities to. You're looking at the person right there that's right there with you, and I think that's kind of what's happening here. And the other thing I always think about too is I always heard this phrase that, wherever your maturity level is when you first get real money is where you're always going to be in terms of your level of maturity. You'll never be more mature than that moment. And so I don't know if I agree. I don't know, but I've always thought of that whenever I think about guys who get money at a very young age and may not ever grow up the way we want them to or expect them to. Or like you went to college, you played, you kind of were able to be socially adjusted from being in school for a number of years and graduating and, getting your education and everything. And I think sometimes like unless you really invest in yourself and really commit to that side of just maturing, you can be stunted if you get money right away, and it can affect you how you see the world and how you rationalize things. And I mean, I may be being too much psychoanalyst here, but I always wonder like where can you go when you have everything at your disposal at a very young age?
Well, I gotta say, I look at it a little bit differently because you have situations like you have, Kobe, Tracy McGrady, you have LeBron, all that they got a lot of money at a young age. They were in a different, situation. I mean, I've seen guys that have gone to college for 5 years and they're just as immature as if they was in middle school. I think it's kind of a case by case basis. I think that one of the things I wanted to go back to as far as what we said about Gilbert. And the type of personality that he has.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. So Gilbert so this is how I always describe Gilbert,
We're not on a podcast.
I describe him as the Kanye West of the NBA. That's how I always described him. Now, and what I mean by that is incredibly talented. You know what I mean? Gifted beyond compare, but likes attention a little bit too much.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I mean, that's a pretty crazy analogy now.
Well.
Kanye's going off.
Well, that's what I said. Aside from the recent,
not this era.
Yeah, but no, that's okay. You're right, though.
Yeah, no, you're the recent Kanye with the all the extra crazy stuff. I was talking about it, like I said this for years before the recent Kanye started happening. And the thing is, so Gilbert, we talk about the kind of leader that Gilbert was. Gilbert was like that. So back in the day, if you remember in high school, the kid who carried his books like home in a pizza box because he didn't want anybody to know that he was studying, but he was actually studying when he went home. You know what I mean? So it was like, so Gilbert would be late. I remember Gilbert would come to practice extra early, right? Like say he would come to practice like at 6 o'clock, some crazy time, work out for like 3 hours, right? And then be late to practice. Then he would be late to practice, and practice is at like 11 o'clock or 10 o'clock. And it'd be like, he was in the building. I'm like, what? How are you late to practice? You know, so it was like he wanted to be this person who didn't have to play by the rules. I don't want to do this. And him and Eddie Jordan had this thing, and Ernie Grunfeld just let Gilbert do whatever he wanted to do. And a lot of it's so interesting because another thing that a lot of people stopped me and asked me about it was when the shooting guards came out with Javaris Crittenton, and they asked me about that, how that happened. And one part that they left out about in that documentary is Ernie Grunfeld aspect. They didn't talk about Ernie Grunfeld enough there, because I really believe that none of that would happen if Ernie Grunfeld didn't run it the way that he ran. You got to understand. Gilbert did whatever he wanted to. Like guys could tell you so many stories about Gilbert that was far beyond anything that you have ever heard of, and it was just allowed. It was just like it was okay. And I remember Eddie Jordan trying to discipline him and trying to maybe fine him for being late to practice, and Ernie Grunfeld would give him his money back. You know what I mean? Like it was literally he was like a kid that could do whatever he wanted to do. So yes, that's going to turn out bad, 100%, because it's just going to get worse and worse. But Gilbert wasn't necessarily. He needed a situation where there were rules, where they said you can do this, you cannot do this. And
that wasn't Washington.
It wasn't Ernie.
It wasn't Washington.
It was Eddie Jordan tried to. But it wasn't Ernie Grunfeld for whatever reason. I don't know why he ran it like that, but he just didn't. He let Gilbert do whatever he wanted to do. But seeing them as far as now and seeing what he's doing now with his podcast and everything like that, this is right in his personality. He can say whatever he wants to say. He can be himself, say anything. Everybody's going to be focused on it. He can tell a story. He
could lend his house to run a big poker game. What's up with that?
Hey, I have no idea about that.
Come on, let's libel somebody now. No, but when I heard about that, Atan, I was like, how do you not invite some of the writers to the big house game? I don't understand. How does that not happen?
I started to a comedian.
All right. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, and to your point, I am a little bit worried about him with this situation, because I don't necessarily think that he's taking it as seriously as it is. Like for one,
has he ever taken anything seriously?
Let me give you a level of situation here.
This is when you talk about Michael Lee talking about getting money, and you're never more mature than you were when you got paid. I mean, I remember distinctly, and look, I hope he does have the lawyers, the legal representation, that he doesn't spend any time in jail. And part of me thinks there's a great hypocrisy that anybody in the game now is flagged for gambling, given all the money that is given to the leagues by DraftKings and all the teams that they're, all the casinos that they're in business with. But all that said, I can tell you, I mean, during the finger guns thing, remember when he, he's in the, and then the finger guns, and Stern's about to suspend him for the whole year. I'm in the Washington Post office talking to Gilbert on the phone, and he's going, you think you think they're going to suspend me for the whole year? And I go, I don't know. He goes, David Stern don't like that shit. I mean, he goes, and all of a sudden, David Stern was on the other line. And I go, oh my God. And I get David, and I go, David, you're not going to believe this, but Gilbert Arenas on the other line. He goes, David Stern in his cool, calm demeanor goes, I want you to hang up right now. And I want you to talk to me. And I want you to tell Gilbert I care about him, but I'm not going to let him hurt himself any longer. And like, oh man, it was like on. And then Stern just suspends him for the whole year. And it's like Gilbert had no idea that a couple of days after bringing guns in the locker room, and apparently Jarvar is critting and chambering around, he was out there doing finger guns. I mean, he had it was mocking the suspension.
Well, you got to understand, he was allowed to do it. He was right. So the reason why he did that is because he thought that there was not going to be any repercussions, because there was never any repercussions for anything that he did. You know what I mean? But the thing that changed, if that thing with the finger guns wasn't caught on video and put out to
no one would have said anything about it.
Then then Ernie Grunfeld wouldn't have had no issue, because he's done far worse.
Yeah,
like
Ernie may have seen it.
There was never a problem until it was shown to the public.
Right.
It's kind of like how Ray Rice, they all saw the video way before that. And they all knew about the video, but then once it became public, then it became a whole big issue. And
then you got some. He's done. You're right. You're so that's so true. But Ernie was like, the Washington Wizards would like to announce that Gilbert Arenas is suspended for 4 games. Like what?
But that's so. What I want to ask you all in this, because I do still feel that his anger is, I think he's mad at the wrong people. But I do want to ask, what role do you think the media has in shaping the public's view of athletes? Now with social media, athletes will be able to do a little bit more of their own crafting, like they couldn't be able to do before. I mean, there was no like you said, Mike Wise. Usually, it's everybody had to come to one of y'all to be able to talk about anything.
We were the messengers.
But now it's so even with that, do y'all remember? And it's funny because I think it was you, John Mitchell, and I think it was you, Michael Lee, when I first wanted to come out and speak out against the war in Iraq, and I wanted to run something in the Washington Times, and I wanted to run something in the Washington Post, and y'all were like, we can't run this. You know what I mean? And I don't know. I don't remember if it was it you, Michael Lee? Do you remember that?
I don't remember being there then, because
it might not have been. It might have been before you, but I do remember me and you, John, talking about it.
We had that conversation.
Yeah.
But at the arch right Washington Times,
I get it.
The Washington Times wasn't going to let an young African American basketball player demonstrate his intelligence. I can say that freely now. They were, because a lot of people have glommed on to that, but they weren't going to have that at the time. The Washington Times, I mean, let's be quite honest. There are incredible leanings in media that we see now. Extreme left, extreme right. They still exist. 20 years ago, they existed and were very, very prevalent.
Yeah, but they were like, it was more covert. You're right.
Yeah, like I give you a case in point. Something that. It happened in Washington when Ty Lue was playing, and this was during the war, and Ty Lue was goaded by a reporter who led him to compare these games to wars, and that was the Associated Press. It was Joseph White.
Yeah,
I remember Joe White. Joe White. I think he's dead. I think he's passed on.
Rest in peace. But Joe led T. Lue who was as genuine as a person. One of the most genuine people I've ever covered in my career in him. And he led him down this path where he said, yeah, this is like a war with us. And athletes are conditioned to say, yeah, this is a war,
So then Ty Lue looks like he's comparing the two, and he looks bad.
And that's how the article was written, as if Ty Lue came up with this analogy and it was like, how dare you have the audacity, you young, privileged, and entitled athlete, to make this comparison to the young men and women who are fighting for all of our rights. And it was one of the worst examples of manipulation at that time, because now it's gotten so horrendous and horrific that nothing even comes close to it now. But I felt sorry for T. Lue in that moment.
I did too. And I remember that very well. He took a lot of heat from it. And they were like, and he said, I think in the article that you're referencing, he said, no, the real soldiers are the ones that are fighting and defending our country, not you, Tyrone Lue. Like the way that he said, I was like, wow. And you're right. He led him down that path. So that goes into what I was saying before about wanting to come out and say that I was against the war in Iraq. The issue that I had, and this is why I started really looking at the media and looking at how the crafting, as far as athletes are concerned, and the way that things are described, there was no problem and no hesitation from the Washington Times talking to me and printing when I wanted to talk about the fight with me and Brendan Haywood. No hesitation at all. That was fine. We'll talk about that. What more details do you want to say? Okay, you said this, and then he said this, and like detailed all the way. But when I wanted to come and speak about something with some substance of what, it was like, no, we can't talk about that. And that was like, that was a problem for me. You know what I mean? And it wasn't you, Michael Lee, but it was a different reporter for the Washington Post. I don't remember who it was, but it wasn't
Ivan Carter. Was it Ivan Carter?
No, I think this was before Ivan Carter.
Oh, okay, all right.
But both told me no. You know what I mean? And actually, that's how I met Dave Zirin, because he was working for the Prince George's Post, and I met
that's hilarious.
I met him at a rally, and I think I told him the story. He was like, "Oh, well, I'll print the article." I was like, "Really?" He was like, "Yeah." I was like, "All right, cool."
I'm surprised that whoever was covering that for the Post wouldn't have let you talk about that. I think the interesting thing was you were probably on the forefront of some of this renaissance of social conscience among athletes, which to me didn't really, get in full mode or start up until LeBron and D Wade and the Heat wore the hoodies supporting the Trayvon Martin after the killing of Trayvon Martin. And that was like a big deal at the time. Like, wait, whoa, you're getting involved in politics now. And then there became like this, I want to say from 2012 to almost now, because guys are backing off now because of the new administration and everything. I feel like that, like you were on the cutting edge of something that was brewing for a long time.
Well, there was generations before me though.
But I mean, we lost it between Michael and Tiger. I'm sorry, we lost it for a time.
Yeah, but you had Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf and Craig Hodges, and those are the ones that I really, was reading about and admiring, the athletes that used their positions and their platforms, and you saw the backlash that they received. Right. I mean, just think about it. Craig Hodges, they were so upset with him for handing a letter. That's all he did. He handed that's like the most respect. He handed a letter to Bush. I know, it's like, that's it. That's what y'all mad about.
Yeah. Chris Jackson. Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf.
Right. Yeah. He was like Kaepernick before Kaepernick.
Yeah.
And it's just that. So where we are now with the media, and this is the question that I have. Yeah. I had a great, I thought was a great discussion with David Aldridge and Mark Spears, maybe 1 or 2 years ago. And David Aldridge is my guy. He's an OG in this. You know what I mean? Like we have great debates, great discussions. He's been on the Collision a couple times. We've talked. It's been great. We disagreed. It's been great, right? So he had an issue with me using the phrase "the media."
Yeah.
Because he said, when you say and I say it, but he said, when you say the media, you're putting all of us in one box. And we're not all the same. You know, even there's some that are journalists, there's some that are you know, commentators, there's some that are you know, more color, like whatever you call Stephen A. Smith. What do you call him? You don't call him a journalist, you know, he was, but you call him more of a media personality. It's like everybody is different, but you put us all in one box of the media. And I was like, I hear you, but, and this is what I said during while we was having our discussion, I was like, you know, he's like, we're not all like Jason Whitlock. We're not all like Stephen.
Thank God.
You know, and we're not all that way. And I was like, I hear you, but I don't ever hear any of the media holding each other accountable. So I made the reference. I was like, okay, it's kind of like how the police have this blue shield and the blue line, and they don't want to criticize each other no matter what it is. But then if you say all the police are one way, they're like, wait a minute, there's bad apples and there's good apples. But you'll never hear the good apples criticize the bad apples. And so I made that correlation. And while I was making the correlation, Mark Spears didn't like that. You know, he's like, wait. No, he didn't like the whole comparison. But David Aldridge knew what I was talking about. And that's, I don't know. It's tough because I know that all the media aren't the same, but I also know that, you know, what did Malcolm X say? The media is the most powerful entity on earth because they are able to control the minds of the masses. And that's 100% true. I know, and I think that comes great responsibility, though, right?
They do, but and I agree with you completely. But we're now in an era of corporate media, and like Stephen A. being who he is now. He's on Bill Maher's show. He's got his podcast. You know, kudos to Stephen A. for developing this image and going way beyond the guy who used to play basketball with us. You know,
that's right,
at the playoffs. You know, and developing this unique, and like I'm personally rooting for Stephen A. because we go back 30 some odd years.
Yeah,
and he's an HBCU alum. Like I am, like Michael is. So when I see a brother like that achieving in the media and I see guys taking shots at him, I'm always going, and he's my friend. In full disclosure, he's been my friend for years. So I'll root for him. But I understand Spears' position because I went back and watched that when you and I talked about that.
Okay.
And Spears is not allowed to be overly comfortable in his criticism or his critique of Stephen A. because Stephen A. is laying not like golden eggs, but he's laying golden bowling balls now.
You know, well, yeah, and they work at the same place.
And they work at the same place, and it's the nature. You know, if you work along somebody whose star is that high, you're only going to be allowed to say so much. And at the same time, you say, well, I've got my own best interest, and I've got my family's best interest, and I've got to prosecute those things. And if I say, because Mark Spears is as genuine as it gets, but there are going to be some places you just can't go. I will allow you that. I will allow you that. Now, me, because I no longer work in the media, I don't give two shits. Right. You know,
I mean, I'm the kind. I look. I even took shots at the different media people when I was, full-time employed by a media institution. I hear you, and I think we do have a role in shaping how people look at athletes, especially Black athletes. Speaking for white America, no, I'm kidding. But like, I do think there's something. You know, you're onto something there. I'm the same way. I grade it when I hear the media because look, when I go to speak to schools even now, I said, like, look, I did a story about Gilbert and the mom who abandoned him and the whole backstory of Gilbert. And I don't do that story if I don't go to Gilbert first and I say, look, man, I'm going to go down to Miami and look for your mom. I know she's on the street down there. But if you're not okay with that, and he goes, no, I never even opened that door in my life. I want to know where she is. I'm like, okay, well, to me, that was a big deal. For all intents and purposes, there are a few journalists, me being one maybe, who know who LeBron's biological father is. I won't to this day. I don't care if you give me $1 million, $10 million, I'm not gonna write that story unless LeBron is saying, okay, I'm okay with this and I'll be part of it. Because otherwise, you're betraying the person. And I don't care if you're the biggest public figure in the world. If someone should have the right to open those kinds of doors. So, am I guilty of writing stuff that pissed people off some of which I took back? Yeah. But I've also tried to go about the idea that if I talk to people before I write about them or during sensitive stories, I at least give them a say in what they, are they okay with I talk to this person, that person. To me, that's an important thing that a lot of media people don't get into. And they'll just, I mean, I hated Deadspin, even though they had great stories, because they write about me sometimes and nobody would call me. Like if I do something stupid or say something stupid on my radio or wherever, or I write, just call me and I could at least tell you, that was a cardinal rule of journalism. You talk to the other side.
Yeah, but that's the way it's supposed to happen. But go ahead, Michael Lee. Go ahead.
I was going to say that I'm still part of what I think, well, how I was trained coming up, to where the media, or the reporters, journalists, I'll say journalists, are not supposed to be the story, like, ever. And so I never wanted to inject myself into the story to be part of the story. I always was going to observe what I saw and give my perspective, or whatever perspective, an objective, hopefully an objective perspective, to an audience. And sometimes I came short of that. Sometimes I felt like I did a great job of it, but I never wanted to be the story. I never wanted to be about me. I never wanted to have my name mentioned or talked about. I felt like if anyone talked about me or something that I wrote, I was embarrassed, because I didn't want the focus to be on me. And so one of the reasons why a lot of journalists don't call out other people when they make mistakes is because we don't want to draw attention to them and make them the story. Because again, we are given this platform to write about athletes or about the people that we write about. Like me, I want to stay in the back. I want to observe what's happening and kind of tell the story as somebody, to try to help the audience, relate to the player. Or if I want to, like Mike's done a great job of really humanizing athletes, and I feel like I try to do the same thing, where I try to make you relate to them on a level to where you understand that, yeah, they're out here doing superhuman things on the court or on the field, but they still have the same insecurity, same whatever else that everybody else deals with. They just happen to do it in a public forum. But when it comes to journalists, I never want to get involved with criticizing somebody for doing their job, because again, we don't know what everybody's motivations are. We don't know what pressure they're under from their bosses, what they have to do to perform, what they have to do to maintain their job. And so I always just say, I don't want to be out here bashing somebody when I don't really know their whole story. And I also don't want to make them the story when I know that what people, at least in my opinion, what people should care about are the guys on there performing out there and doing things that we pay to watch. Like, nobody's paying to watch me write my feature on whatever. No one's sitting around and watching me type, you know. But they are sitting around watching athletes go out there and catch a football, run the ball, and do all these amazing things on the football field. So I never really want the attention to be on the people who cover the athletes or cover the politicians or whatever. I always felt that it should be our job to provide a platform for these people to express themselves and to be seen in a way that they want to be seen, or the way they wish they should be seen. And I think that that's something that's lost in this age now. And I think John and I have talked about this, how there's celebrity journalists now, which for me
Yes.
is like, it's baffling to see a celebrity journalist, because I know when I started getting into this field, I had no desire to be a celebrity. I wanted to do good work and get recognized and have people say, "Oh, that was a good story," but I didn't want to like be on TV. And it's just something that didn't make sense to me. That why would you get into this if you want to be a celebrity? Like, if you want to be a celebrity, do something that people care about, but don't be a journalist. Like, we're supposed to be just writing about people who do great things.
Right.
And so I think that's part of why we don't necessarily try to come out and say, I don't like how this guy goes about doing his job. I don't like how he does his job or she does her job, because for me, I know, and I'm still a stickler to it. I never want to be the story. I mean, there have been times where like I've had, disagreements with people. Like there one time I had a really big thing with Randy Whitman where he called me out on like live TV in an interview, and I decided in that moment that I didn't want to go in a back and forth with him because I didn't want the next day to be like, Washington Post reporter Michael Lee clashed with Randy Whitman. Like I didn't want that to be a story because I am not the story. So I like intentionally, stay quiet until the cameras went off and until I could actually, speak to him, away from, everyone else because I didn't want the attention on me. And I think that we don't want to put the attention on each other in all the respects because I honestly feel like on the scale of importance when it comes to sports, we should be the least important.
I only go, no, he's right. But I only go off on that. I only go off on people in my business that have kind of left my business. And Jason Whitlock, who was, I'd say I was more than peripheral friends with him. He's the one who brought me to ESPN. That part of, it just, to me, it was sad. It was sad what happened to Jason. He'd gone off the deep end. He had conservative views and he'd done some real Machiavellian things to people in the business that I know, but he was always an idea guy. So to see him just go off the deep end and what I call find a revenue stream, realizing that there was a revenue stream of angry white males out there that just needed that one black columnist to validate their beliefs. That to me is just sad. And whatever you want to call it, Jason, he was smart and he had ideas and people forget about that about him, but he's just gone off the deep end. And there's a lot of people in our business that have gone off the deep end, and I have no problem taking them on because they're not journalists anymore.
Well, okay. There's a lot. So one with Jason Whitlock. I sat on a panel with Jason Whitlock my last year in the league when I was in Atlanta, and it was a panel at Morehouse, and there was Jim Brown. I was sitting right next to Stephen A. Smith, Alonzo Mourning, Jason Whitlock, Vivian Stringer. It was an amazing panel. Spike Lee I don't know what I was doing on, but they it was an amazing panel.
Yeah.
And let me interrupt you real quickly, and I'll let you get right back to your story because I'm interested in hearing how. But had Jason anointed Vivian Stringer's players as a nappy-headed hose yet? Had he done that?
Yeah. Okay. So that was
that's right. That's right.
So they had a back and forth about that during the panel.
Okay.
It was really explosive, to be honest with you. So at that time, afterward the panel, I didn't really know who Jason Whitlock was at that point, and I had conversations with him, and they were good conversations. He's telling me about different things he believes, something like this. We're talking, right? And so I was like, okay, this report seems all right. I see. And then the next day or the next day after that, I read some of his columns, and I was like, oh wow, this is not the person that I just spoke to. Like he doesn't believe any of this stuff. He's writing it because he knows, as you said, Mike Wise, there is an audience of angry white men that want to hear this. That makes it even worse.
Yeah.
It'd be different if you really believe, because I spoke to him. So after that, I wrote this open letter to Jason Whitlock, and I just started going down the list. But he had already made up his mind who he wanted to be, and that's who he is right now. He's doing what he saw that he could carve out a niche for himself, and that's what he's doing. I think that people like that who represent the media should be called out if they say things that are egregious. So for instance, earlier this season, when they were really pitting Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese against each other and really saying that all of the entire WNBA is jealous of Caitlin Clark and nobody likes her and everybody's trying to hurt her and she's this white damsel in distress and we have to protect her at all costs and all that whole narrative. Jason Whitlock, I remember Dejanay Carrington fouled her and the language that he used, it was specifically used for a reason. He said that she attacked her. She stabbed her in the eye with her fingernails, and I was like, whoa, you mean she fouled her? That's it? And it took Caitlin Clark saying, no, nothing happened intentional. It was a regular foul. There's nothing to see here. And then he stopped. But all before that, he was drumming the whole thing up. I think things like that need to be called out, because if you don't call it out, to the public, to other people, it seems like you're going along with it. You're okay with it. You have no issue with it. You know what I mean? And Jason Whitlock is an outlier, of course, I know. But you can even go back to the conversation we were saying about Stephen A. Smith. When Stephen A. Smith is singling out players like Kwame Brown, he was singling him out, saying that he didn't deserve to be in the NBA, that he is this terrible player. He was trashing him, and he was one of the people who, rightfully so, received a lot of Kwame's wrath. I think that Stephen A. Smith owes Kwame Brown an apology. I don't think he ever will, but I think he does, because you don't single out a player and try to tear him down and make it personal, and then say that nobody should say anything personal about you.
One thing about
life works, you know what I mean? But there's a pattern. It's not just Kwame. You know what I mean? He campaigned that Kyrie Irving shouldn't be signed to a long-term deal. Like no team should sign him. He shouldn't be in the league. You can go down the list of people who Stephen A. Smith. So when people are doing that, I think that other people in the media should call him out to say, wait a minute, you can't represent us and do that, because we don't stand. So then once you call it out, then you're not lumped in with that. Do you know what I'm saying? And that's go ahead.
And because I think that we can provide the counter or provide the balance, because like you say, there's media, but of course they're going to be the guys that are loudest and the more people who can strike a nerve, and more provocative, who can really engage people, an audience, and really get them hooked and saying crazy things. But I also think that there could be a balance to that too, because I remember, when all this stuff was going on with Caitlin Clark in her rookie year, and I wanted to do a story on like how she's dealing with all of this stuff, because everything was being thrown on her, and she didn't ask for any of it. And I just wanted to get a sense of like how she was dealing with it. And so I did a story just to kind of get a sense of how she's dealing with it, as opposed to like attacking people who are like really kind of feeding it. And so I think that as journalists, some of us have a responsibility to provide an alternative or provide another voice, as opposed to just saying this person is wrong, because that person again is employed by a company that is profiting off of that behavior and is probably invested in that person to say those type of things to make noise. So we can go at the personality all day and say you're wrong for that. But when that person goes home and they're still cashing those checks from the company that is fine with that, what we're saying is just part of the noise. But if we can say, well, that's a ridiculous way to sell this story or tell this story, I'm going to tell the real version. And I think that that's how I view it as what our role is that, there's like you said, there's left-wing media, there's right-wing media, there's, everybody, are there, but we can provide a balance, and we can provide an opportunity to say, I don't really want to listen to that guy yelling and screaming about this. I want to talk to somebody who actually can provide the perspective of these players that I really want to see and hear. And I think we can do both. And I think that if we get into a situation where we put all the attention on the people who want the attention, then we're feeding that beast in a way that is not healthy either, because all we're doing is kind of just feeding that same beast, as opposed to allowing people to know that, hey, yeah, you can go there for that if that's what you want. But if you don't want that, you can come here and you can read something like this, or you can listen to this podcast that offers a perspective that's totally different. And I think that there's enough of that out there now, and there's enough opportunities for that. But if we just all jump in and pile on somebody who is saying things for the sole purpose of getting attention. A lot of times, these people are out here just to get the response, to get the buzz.
Pat
And
McAfee.
Yeah.
and
Oh,
then and then
I
and
just
then, and
want
then
to smack him.
and they win in the end because they got just what they wanted. They got all the attention, all the buzz, and their bosses are like, "Wow, look at this guy! Look at all the reactions to that tweet or all the reactions to
Yeah.
that YouTube video, all because they said something really provocative." And if we feed into it, then we're propping that up, and saying that that's what people need to pay attention to. When I think as journalists, we don't necessarily need to attack them and give them more attention. We can actually try to funnel people to a different way of looking at things. But that's just me.
But let me just provide a counter to that, because um, the fact that nobody did have a different way of looking everything, going back to Kwame when he was being casted in the media in a certain way, and the lady Sally
Jenkins
wrote what she wrote, there was no counter narrative written by anybody. There was no counter that this is that wasn't there. So when you saw Kwame explode and say F you to everybody, the reason why he said F you to everybody is because everybody was involved. Everybody was okay with it. Everybody, nobody said, I mean, the reason why he said not F you to me is because I told him this was wrong. Like, this wasn't right. Like, that's not cool how people are doing. Like, I don't agree with this. Like, you sometimes you have to say and be the lone person to say this is not right, even if everybody is saying it. You know what I mean? So if somebody would have provided the counter narrative when Stephen A. Smith was bashing him, you know what I mean? Like on and he has ESPN, you know, he's on every network, every hour, every time they put him on, nonstop bashing Kwame. There was no counter narratives. There was no anything else. There was no other perspective or anything. Nothing else was shown.
I would.
I see. The funny thing is,
they didn't get the attention that Stephen got for saying those things.
Wait, say it again.
No, go ahead, Michael. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I think there were alternatives, but again, if you wind up focusing on the negative energy and you attack it or you prop it up, then you feed into it too. You know.
Yeah, you're right, because I think human nature. I mean, I use whatever. I'd write some story and, I might got 50 great emails and be like, oh, and then that one that goes off on me like, hey, dummy, and that's the one I open in my inbox. It's like human nature. You go to the negative and it's like, but real quick, Tom, another guy that Stephen A. owes an apology to, Rasho Nesterovich. I mean, oh my God, he cracked me up when he would do some names.
I mean, there's a lot of people, honestly, that he owes. But go ahead, John.
Let me, if we look at this, we're talking about sports, but all this stuff really changed because people are no longer looking for information. People are looking. Our society now in the last 10 years is the people looking for people to affirm their beliefs.
Yes.
And this, I hate to sully this podcast. This is all Donald Trump, and it has drizzled down into sports now. I mean, this is a guy who, when everything, so that he could promote his lies and prosecute his lies, the Washington Post, which I've always read for my news, when all of a sudden the Washington Post, which brought down a president in the 1970s for his criminal acts, Donald Trump found a lane where he could tell people this is fake news. Don't believe any of it. Don't believe it unless I affirm it. And so we I mean, just look what he just recently did with the person from the Bureau of Labor and Statistics. Now, this person puts out the same statistics that everybody has access to about the economy. And he fires him. So therefore, the people who are rooting for Donald Trump are saying, you fired this guy, and we believe that, I mean, your ear got shot off, but Jesus saved you. So this is how far our society has gone off the rails. And I circled that back to say that you can do the same thing with sports now. People are looking, for something to affirm. Jason Whitlock's a perfect example. I used to be decent friends with Jason Whitlock. But one day he told me who he was. When he told me, he said, "John, I'm the best black columnist, best black sports columnist in America."
That's
Um,
what he said.
that's what he said. And instantly, the mechanism in my mind that went off was like, okay, so you see a Negro League for sports journalists, which is
that's deep.
which is less than the major leagues, and
Yeah.
these white guys who get these jobs, because many black sports journalists after a while in the newspaper industry said, "I'm not kidding, they're not going to consider me for a columnist job." And I think I've told you this before, Ty. So so he says that what he's basically telling you is that these white columnists are the elite, and the Michael Wilbons and the Stephen A. Smiths, you Negroes are down here. And that shows you a level of self-loathing that he has. And that's why he can go on a platform and say, you know what, I'm going to call these Rutgers women nappy-headed hoes because I don't respect myself. I detest myself and have contempt for myself. So, and although that happened before Trump, what Trump has done with media is he's opened it up for everybody. Before those planes touched, and I'm gonna get off of him, but before those planes touched down after bombing Iraq, he already knew before talking to the generals, before talking to people who commanded those planes, that an obliteration had taken place before getting the military report. Let me just go out here and push this news out here. And that's kind of where we are with sports now. There are no rules, and I respect Michael for what Michael said, and I see that Michael's working, and both Mike's works. This is what we all did. We reported the news. We didn't, you could look at Kwame Brown's career and say, yeah, maybe he was a first round bust. But the more knowing person says a first pick bust. But the person who's more knowing about the NBA says, I don't know, Kwame made about 60, 70, 80 million. Bust me. Let me be that bust. And general managers and coaches said there is a value ascribed, assigned to him. But now we're in this world where again, people want you. I want you to affirm my beliefs. I'm not.
Yeah, no, that's the problem. Is the whole notion of all the alternative fact. Before there was a time when you could argue whatever it was, players' stats, abortion, capital punishment, religion. But at some point you didn't agree to disagree because you had the same set of facts that you were arguing. Nowadays you could go somewhere and someone will say something and it's taken as gospel and it's retweeted. I mean, I have a cousin in Germany, and she came up to me and she goes, "So what about this great replacement theory where all the brown and black people are taking the jobs of white people?" And I'm like, Christine, I just did a fact check on that. It was from this Snopes thing. They do a fact check, and they said that it was a quote that was taken out of context and put on Facebook, and it got viral. And people bought this whole thing. Bill Gates and Soros and all these people, they're part of it. And she goes, I think the fact checking services are part of it. Like everybody's a conspiracy theory. Like not even the people checking the facts they think are part of it. Like at some point we got away from just arguing and talking what basic facts about things. That an election was won by Joe Biden. It wasn't won by Donald Trump. A good part of the country still believes that election was malfeasance. That's crazy to me.
And that is,
and you see how that,
and you look at that prism. You're right, John, and it goes and it just opens up the whole Pandora's box of how we discuss things now.
But you still have to have the people that are able to call out the hypocrisy, the inaccuracy, and the lies, and the things that aren't true, that aren't factual. Like you have to have those people to call that out, or just everybody's just going to go with whatever narrative, like you said, John, that Trump puts out there. Right now, he said DC is crime ridden, and we have to be able to do something to. Like, wait a minute, that's not what the actual statistics say. He just made it up. So people are saying, okay, where did he come up with those statistics? I'll tell you where he came up with them. He made them up. They're not actual statistics. They're not true. But he wanted to implement what he wanted to implement, and he just used some facts that he put together to order to support what he already wanted to do and was going to do regardless of the facts. So you have to have some people, and it would be great to have people who are in that same sphere, who are politicians, to call that out, to say, no, this is wrong. This is not true. So I correlate that to the media, where I say you have to have people who are, if somebody writes something like that is factually incorrect, that is demonizing something or representing all the media in a way that kind of puts everybody in a bucket, like what David Aldridge doesn't want me to do. Somebody has to call out and say that's not right. That doesn't represent us. We're not okay with that. That is not factual. Because if you don't, then you have somebody like Kwame Brown that thinks, okay, everybody's going along with it. F y'all. And I understand why he feels that way. And I always say that when people say, well, why is Kwame Brown so mad? He said, because it seemed like everybody in the world was against him. Literally, like, just imagine you're 17, 18 years old, and every single person on earth is against you.
Yeah.
Like, you can't, that's not something you just get over. Yeah, they're scars. So when the whole thing happened with Stack and Matt Barnes, and the thing, it might have seemed like a little thing, but it was the straw that broke the camel's back. It was like,
wait, okay, what happened with Stack and Matt? What happened with Stack and Matt Barnes? I forgot about that.
They mentioned him, and everybody was like, okay, that wasn't even that bad. You know, they mentioned him. They said, I remember exactly how it went. Stack said something. He was good, and Matt Barnes was giggling about it, and he said something like he wasn't a pick that was that important. That's what Gilbert was referring to when I was reading the thing. But it wasn't that it was that egregious. It was that it's been going on, and he's been enduring that for 25 years. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So when people are like, well, why is he cool with you? I was like, because I didn't go along with it. He's not. He has different parts where he was, threw some shots at, like, maybe Brendan or Jared Jeffries, because they were giggling when he remembered when something else would happen, when other guys are, he remembers stuff. Obviously, it's still inside him. You know what I mean? Because he's recollecting these different things that happened when he was younger. Remember, he's 17, 18 years old, but he remembers all of it. So then now you have, fast forward to this thing with Gilbert, and you're like, okay, so you did this. So even if he doesn't have all of the facts correct, the fact that Gilbert didn't pass the ball to anybody, the fact that Gilbert could do whatever he wanted to, the fact that Gilbert, how can that not breed some type of resentment? You know what I mean? Because he didn't experience any of that. But going back to the media, and I want to make this point. During that conversation with David Aldridge and Mark Spears, I made a reference to the power of the media. So I was using Stephen A. Smith as the example. And I said that, Stephen A. Smith, I don't kind of think of how I actually framed it, but I was comparing him to the amount of power and influence that he has to the same amount of power that Tucker Carlson has over his demographic. And so when he says something, it resonates with a lot of people because his voice is that it's really complimenting Stephen A. Smith. That's why he has a $100 million contract. ESPN wouldn't have given him that if he didn't have a strong and powerful voice. So when he says something, yes, it does reverberate through the entire sports world.
Right.
So with that comes responsibility. Mm-hmm. You can't talk reckless. And he talks reckless often. Mm-hmm. And so when you have that level of power, then you have to be careful what you say. And if you say something that's out of line, you have to have integrity enough to be able to say, I'm sorry, I was wrong. Why is that so hard?
But you know why? Wait.
That doesn't take away from his power.
Right.
That doesn't take away from his $100 million contract. That doesn't change anything of who's he's still going to be on TV every hour at the top of the hour, screaming and saying all this stuff and making his points and talking about the Knicks and all. He's still going to be doing everything that he does. He can be wrong about the way he handled this situation with Kwame Brown. He can be wrong with how he demonized Kyrie Irving. He can be, and that's when Denzel Washington was just recently talking about all of this different stuff with the media and everything like that. It seemed like he was talking about Stephen A. Smith. I could be wrong, but the way that he was describing how people just criticize and it's like that's become the new norm.
Boom! You just hit it. You just hit on it. That's the new norm. The going off on somebody is the new. That's the problem. Going off on someone is the new norm, and there's something deeply wrong with that. I think I'm not as close to John Mitchell to Stephen A. But I consider him more than a peripheral friend. I've known him for 30 years. We've been at a lot of events together. I'm almost more amused that he became this famous than I am like angry at it, because to me it says more about the industry. If we want to get real, David Aldrich was a great reporter. ESPN got rid of him. They gave the money to a guy who was the caricature of a loud black man, and that was and Stephen A's played into that, and he's done very well. But let's be honest, this is about American media saying this is what they want, this is what they think is going to work. And God bless Stephen A. I know he works very hard at it, and he puts all kinds of hours in. I'm amused that he became that guy, but I'm also like, if I had any, grievance about it, I think I would be more angry at his bosses and the legacy media institutions that let Pat McAfee even have a job. I mean, those are the things that I'm more upset about. I look at Trump. I don't hate Trump as much as I'm sickened to the point where he's become popular, and like, what does that say about us? That guy's now like got half the country behind him. What does that say about America? Like the fact that that we were in a point in our history that man was ripe for being the leader of the free world. That says so much about us and everybody else. I don't know. That's just me.
No. I definitely hear what you're saying, and it's trying to improve.
I think that the media is such a massive boogeyman, because it can be anything. Everything is media. Everything is media. You got a phone now. You got media. You got access.
Yeah, you're media, Tom. You're now part of the.
You're
not part of our profession, and you make more than us, which is really depressing.
But the niche that I tried to carve with what I do, and the reason why I even got into the media, was more like a Harry Allen. If y'all remember Harry Allen, y'all might not know, but he was a media assassin. So it was, and that's why. So when I first got into the media, it was combating the Tom Knotts of the world. You know what I mean? And John Mitchell's laughing because he knows.
Tom Knott.
That guy there.
Yeah,
he lived for criticizing Wizards players. Yeah. Never interviewed anybody, just criticized from afar and tore us to shreds. Like, it was like, wow, do you hate all athletes, or do I hate what?
Here's the hardest part. Here's the hardest part about that. Tom Knott actually had a little game, didn't he, J. Mitch?
Yeah, he
did. He could play a little bit. But I said one day, I think it was Stephen A. Might have been. He was guarding him at the NBA playoffs, and Stephen A. got all flustered, and somebody went up to Stephen A. and goes, "Hey man, don't worry, that dude's got formaldehyde under his eyes. Like, he looked dead. Tom Knott looked like he crawled out of a crypt."
But yeah, I think it's kind of like a buffet. Like, if you go into a buffet, right? That's what you say media is. And if everybody's eating the fried chicken, right? Everybody wants to go there. And you got like the grilled chicken off to the side. Mm-hmm. And as a business, if you see that everybody is going to the fried greasy food, then they're not going to invest in the baked healthy option. And so, but you have to provide it. And I say that it's there. But at this time in society, everyone has decided that they're not going for the healthier option. They're going for the option that's going to be upsetting. It's going to be, strike a nerve. It's going to get people, going. And so, but you have to, as a buffet, you got to provide all these kind of alternatives, and you have an option to say, I'm not going to eat that. I'm going to eat this because this is what's going to be more fulfilling for me. And I think you have to have that choice. But it doesn't do the grilled chicken any good to just yell at the fried chicken over there and say, don't eat that, eat me. I think that that's sort of where we are, where we have choices, we have options, we have different voices, we have different ways to communicate. We have people who provide more enlightening opinions, who try to educate people and try to be thoughtful and, in what they do and put a lot of, care into their product and make sure that what they do is respectful and honors the subject. But that's not necessarily what the audience wants right now. And so if you're a business and you're trying to make money, you're going to funnel your resources toward what's going to get the attention and what's going to drive more dollars for you. And that's unfortunate. But I just feel like instead of like beating down an easy target, if you can try to provide something that can be nurturing and nourishing to people as an alternative, then that's really all you can do as a journalist. Because like I said, otherwise you just wind up being a part of the noise. And I don't want to be part of the noise in that respect, where everybody's paying attention to what's being said over here. I'd rather ignore it and focus my energy on trying to promote something else or promote it in a different way so that people can sort of have the option. If you want a salad, man, here, have a salad. But if you want the cheeseburger, go over there and have it and enjoy it because that's what you want. But we're gonna have a salad over here, so you can have some balance and get some nourishment out of this because I think that as a society and as a nation, people don't want nourishment anymore. They want comfort. And so that's what they're seeking. And it's easy to do that if somebody's just yelling at you, saying what you want to hear. It's harder if you got to actually work at it. And people don't really want to put the work in to educate themselves and to learn anymore. They want to be fed. Critical thinking is at the lowest point ever. No one can think for themselves. They want to have their opinions formulated for them so they can decide what they think is the right way to go. And that's sort of the way the sports economy is now, where before we just put the information out there and let people decide for themselves, oh, that's the way it should be. Because I read this and I saw this and I think that, this is what's right. But now it's just like, oh, well, so-and-so said this, so he's got to be right because he's got a platform to say X, Y, Z. But I think that, I don't know. I don't like where we are in terms of, all of these platforms that people have, but it feels like everybody's just invested in trying to say something that's going to be the most provocative. And we getting back to this beef that we've been talking about, we're paying attention to it because every day they keep topping each other with something crazy about the next man. And we're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe he's saying that. But nobody's turning it off. We're like, well, what they got next? It's almost like the Kendrick.
Yeah, it's K. Dot and Drake.
Like, they were dropping a song like every other day, and it's like, oh, he said that, and then everybody just fed into it because that's where our energy was, and that's what we were digesting.
It's what our society has become.
Yeah.
All of us were trained journalists were trained to, build the inverted pyramid, give the who, what, the when, where, the why. And if you do become a columnist then or a television opinionator, then you do that. But like with sports, and I don't blame these guys because I love them. I mean, Kornheiser and Wilbon, really, that's the genesis of all this. These are guys who had opinions. ESPN said, hey, let's replicate what they do in their offices side by side at the Post. Let's put it on television. Let's make it entertaining and see if we can bring people back. And, so Around the Horn spawned the show with Jay Mariotti, who eventually got out of control with his opinions that came over the top. And right, and then Stephen A. Started. Remember when Stephen A. was on CNN? He was doing that show. Yeah, he was doing that show after the NBA playoffs on CNN. And wound up at ESPN with Skip Bayless. And more and more people were asking for opinion because people now, you'll see a condensed version of a game on YouTube, but people want to hear, well, was there any sniping? Who was sniping at this player? Who was mad because they didn't get the ball in the last second? Who did Draymond run up to and sucker punch on the sidelines? They have become more interested in the outliers of the game. Things that are on the periphery of the game. People are now more interested, with maybe the one exception being football. And if you look at football it's a violent sport where, at every Sunday, who tore the ACL, who tore, who ruptured the patella tendon. And it's a replication of our American society, this throw it all together. Let's be combative as possible, and may the best man win. And that's a lot of what, like with Stephen A. Stephen A. doesn't really have anybody on his level. Pat McAfee, you could say, but Stephen A. has become the wealthiest and probably the greatest draw in this industry, whether you like him or not. People tune on. When Stephen A. is not on ESPN, the ratings plummet. They can't wait for Stephen A. to get off of his post
vacation.
NBA, right? That vacation. They can't wait for him to come back and now, we'll give you Stephen A. and then we'll give you the NFL. And we'll run Stephen A. from show to show to show until after the draft, NBA draft next year. And that's what people. Again, they're not looking for the discerning thinker, the person who's breaking it down as you do on your commentaries, as you do on your stories, Mike and Mike. They're looking for aggression. They are looking to belittle the other side. And Stephen A. has never been bashful of giving an opinion, whether you like it or not.
Right. And
that's what people are for now. They're not looking for tepid. They're looking for intolerance. And again, it's this umbrella over our society in sports. I mean, just look at all these. The Dallas Cowboys now worth $12.5 million. When the Clippers were bought from that wild, bigoted maniac, they went for what? Like they tripled in value, if I'm not mistaken, somewhere along that line. It's business. As Nino Brown told, what was Money's last name?
Money.
My brother, is business. It's never.
but let me say this though, and I do understand your buffet analogy, Michael Lee, and
that made me hungry. That buffet analogy made me hungry. You lost transmission because I went to get something to eat. I was so hungry.
but listen, I will say this, and I had the same conversation when we was debating hip hop. And the hip hop that, because there's a lot of positive rappers, a lot of conscious rappers, a lot of great hip hop that's out there, but they don't get any spins. So they just promote all the negativity all the time. Just like there's a lot of different, great journalists that are giving in-depth, coverage of different topics and breaking things down, but they promote what they promote. And to people who say that, it's consumer driven and they're just giving the people what they want. I would say that, do you remember in the movie Malcolm X when Elijah Muhammad had the 2 cups of water and he said, he poured the iodine in one of them. And he said, if you offer this to the people, they have no choice but to drink it. And then he poured the other one, which is the clear water. He's like, but if you offer them a choice, then they could choose which one that they want. And I think right now, unfortunately, the point that we're in right now is that we're just being offered the water with the iodine in it. You know what I mean? That's in music. that's in television. I think that goes to media as well. And I think that, you know, the more that you have people, and I do respect your analogy of saying that, you know, more journalists can do it a different way where they write a counter narrative without attacking the person. And I think that's fine. And I think that that's great. But that counter narrative needs to be written. And that counter narrative needs to be broadcasted so that that one image that the person has put up there isn't the only image that hangs. And that, going back to Kwame, that narrative of him was the only narrative that was out there then.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? And it was that's the one that hung, and that's why you saw him.
Once it's settled. Once that stamp is on you, once the stamp is on you, a reputation is established in the league. It's hard to escape it. Like you can never.
I disagree with that one because I think that you could write the article, or you can write or change the narrative by giving alternative facts that nobody knew about, and having more, like, so everything that we talked about today as far as how it really was for Kwame back then, you know, how he was set up for failure, how they was, you know, he didn't have a chance, how all of those details, that story could have been told. It just wasn't told back then. It was just that he's a bust. He was one, you know, he was unprepared. David Stern started using him of why he wanted to push the age limit, because I was in the, you know, I was part of the union. So I saw him. He brought Kwame's name up all the time as being exhibit A of why we need an age limit. Then you had Stephen A. Smith there. It was like it was all working together. So when you saw Kwame talking about all the different factions that was against him, that's the only voice that was out there. So what
you should have pulled me up after those NBA PA meetings and told me that. I would have written it.
Wow. There you go.
Yeah, no,
according to sources who were in attendance.
Hey, listen,
you have to do it like Stephen A. According to my sources, pesto and marinara.
According to my sources, he said my close friend called me on the phone.
Yeah, my close friend
told me that while I was eating dinner that this happened in another mistake.
Right.
But I listen. I don't want to keep y'all too long. We've been on it for a while, but this was a very great conversation, and I do hope that Kwame and Gilbert, you know, stop what they're doing.
Absolutely.
I hope that, you know, they're both good brothers. They're both, you know, we're all old now. Like, people ask me, somebody asked me the other day, are you and Brendan still beefing? No, we're not still beefing. We don't beef. Like, ain't no beefing. We got kids.
I think the
podcast, and we squashed the beef, and, you know, we talked about some of the old stuff that happened. That's all. We are too old to be beefing.
You know what?
Everybody know. No, me and Brendan are not still beefing. We're too old for that. You know what?
The collision should host Kwame and Gil airing it out, man. And you're the moderator. That's a podcast. I'm listening to that.
I mean, I would do it. I mean, I'm not gonna say I wouldn't do it. I'm gonna
call Gil tonight and put that together.
Call Gil tonight, set it up. But I would do it because I don't think that it's not productive. And the part that really got me, because I really wasn't gonna touch any of this, but talking to those young kings outside of Busboys and Poets the other day, and seeing how they were influenced, they were entertained, they were impressed, how quickly they pulled up the video, they were making references to it. That's not good. You know what I mean? Like, there's two of, like, so Gilbert did so much in DC, in the community, that he didn't really tell people about.
Yeah,
he did so much positive.
Well, the kid that he befriended that lost his parents in the fire. Remember
But there's literally so much. And he had such a big heart, and he was so giving, and he loved helping people. But that's not the image that he wanted to focus on. Kwame as well. The stuff that Kwame does, the passion that he has for, you know, there are so many different things that could be highlighted by them instead of what is being highlighted right now with the beef. And we just got to understand that young people are watching. And it's not even about them no more. You know what I'm saying? It's not about them and who did what and whatever. It's about the young people that are being influenced by them, because then what they're going to do. I had a young person told, and I think I said this when I was on Brenda's podcast. I had a young person, who told me when I came up to him, I was speaking at a school, and he had gotten in trouble for something, and he said, yeah, this dude disrespected me, so I punched him in his face just like you did to Brendan when he disrespected you. And I was like, hold up, no, I was wrong in how I handled that. You know what I mean? I might have had a reason to be upset. You know what I mean? Because if you feel disrespected, but I was wrong the way that I handled that. But that happened a long time ago. How are you even referencing that right now? You know what I mean? Like were you even alive when that happened? Like how are you referencing? That tells you the amount of influence that we have. And so what I would say to Kwame and Gilbert is just think about the level of influence that you have, and how many of the young people are watching, and how great of an image it would be for you two to squash the beef and to, like, you know what I mean, actually do something together, do something for the community together. I would definitely want to be a part of that. Do it right here in DC. You don't think the Wizard would want to?
So now you're talking.
I would love to be a part of that because of the image that it shows, and that's how we create our own image. And right now with social media, like you said, Mike, guys have the power to be able to create their own image and to be able to construct all the different things, but you got to use that power for good. You know what I mean? You can't use it for bad.
But there's money to be made in negativity,
Yeah.
I work in prisons. I work in. I see now a lot of what they're doing on social media, going back and forth. It reminds me of what I see here in Philadelphia. It's almost like black on black crime, because a lot of these in every city, Washington, Kansas City, New York, Detroit, Chicago, so much of this stuff now with young African-American men is on social media. A lot of these homicides are directly connected to that stuff. And when I see them, I see these guys who've made millions, and I'm like, brother, push that aside. Don't replicate the same thing that these young boys, that these 12, 13, who are going on to somebody's Instagram and seeing, somebody talking trash about their friend, and the next thing you know, there's a gun in somebody's head. It's almost like the same thing. It almost sends a bad message for black. It's like, the African-American male community can't get away from this stuff, no matter how much money you make. So I'd love to see those guys reconcile that. And that comes from a different place, because I know a lot of people aren't going to see that. But, I mean, Michael, you know what happens here in Philly.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. It's in every city,
every city. I mean, every county.
Back in Tulsa, Oklahoma, where I'm from, I mean, it's literally every city around the country. And we just have to be able to use our power to influence young people who are watching us, in a positive way. But listen, hey, like I said, I took enough of y'all time. I appreciate y'all, coming here and talking. We was talking for almost 2 hours. Once Mike Wise finally came on, had us all waiting for half an hour. But once he finally came on, but that was a great discussion. So
thank you guys. I
felt bad about what I did the other day, but
no, don't worry. Yeah, good wishes to your.
Better, I couldn't have talked this long on whatever day of the week that was.
Yeah, good wishes to your families. I'm a Dayton Flyer fan now, because Malcolm's going there now. I'm gonna get myself a Dayton Flyer T-shirt, because Malcolm will be playing for the Flyers. And I'm also gonna cut a diss track on some writer I don't like. I've been waiting for a long time, and I don't know who it's going to be, but I have to find someone.
That is not what I said.
Maybe Isola.
I gotta run, fellas.
Don't be saying that I said that.
No, I know. I'm gonna get Isola. That's what I'll do.
Frank Isola.
Yeah. He's done.
Listen, I gotta run, guys.
Hey, Jay Mitch, nice seeing you.
I appreciate y'all.
All right.
Y'all have a good night. Thanks again.
All right, guys.